Are you a photographer wondering how to approach a subject that has been documented and photographed millions of times before at an extremely high level? Well, then this is a short clip for you. What has happened, Roadies? This week, I was privileged enough to have rock photographer Bob Gruen on the podcast. I have been waiting to do this one for a long time, ever since I read his book, Right Place, Right Time. We're going to get to that in just one second. But in this week's episode, Bob and I really broke down his career, how he approached subjects, why he approached them the way he did, and of course, just the expansiveness of his career and the legends that he got to be around, the icons of the music industry that he helped to, portray visually for the rest of us to enjoy for all these many years. So his book is called Right Place, Right Time. And again, if you are a budding photographer or just someone who's interested in, again, the behind the scenes of the music and film industry, this is a book you got to pick up. Right Place, Right Time, The Life of a Rock and Roll Photographer by Bob Gruen. I read the book probably last year and then finally had a chance to have Bob on the show, and it was amazing. It was amazing. So if you want to get the book, there's a link in the description below where you can subscribe to the show if you haven't done so already. And speaking of which, if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button if you like this video, subscribing to the channel, and of course hitting the bell so you get notified when new videos come out, that would be very much appreciated. So Bob Gruen, again, he's photographed John Lennon, Yoko Ono, Muddy Waters, Johnny Rotten, Sid Vicious, on and on and on, Iggy Pop. Again, the icons of 70s and 80s and 90s rock and roll. The guy knows what to do with the camera. He knows what to do in a frame. So you're not going to want to miss, of course, this short clip as well as the full interview. So without further ado, here is Mr. Bob Gruen.
Call yourself a roadie?
Your photographs obviously are filled with, every frame has an amazing icon in it, a person in it, energy in it. Do you look out your window now in this time in upstate New York and think about going out to shoot landscapes at all, or nature? Or does that tickle your fancy at all? Or are you like, I'm good?
Not necessarily. I mean, there's a lot of good landscape and nature pictures all over the place. I don't think I need to add to that again. I don't see anything that I could do better than a lot of the things I see. So no, I'm actually quite comfortable taking a break and relaxing up here.
I bet. I bet it must be nice after all this time.
Yeah.
Well, on that, in terms of photographing people, one of the things that I thought of as I looked through a lot of the photographs, and again, having read the book and really thoroughly enjoyed it, is when you get an assignment for a band that's established, let's say, and they've already had a pretty solid career, do you think, what can I bring to this that the millions of photographs about these guys or gals have not already shown? Do you think consciously about it, or do you just go into it and say, let's just go for it?
Well, usually I just go into it and go for it and just do what I can do and hope they like it. That's the way I felt when I met John and Yoko. I remember being extremely nervous, but knowing that all I could do was my style of pictures and hope that they liked it. And luckily they did. I just did a session with a band called Maneskin that is one of the most popular bands in the world. If you're under 25, they're the only band in the world. If you're over 25, you never heard of them. But they're really great rock and roll band. I had never heard of them until they called me last October, said they were in New York and wanted to do a photo session. And I found them really a great group of people, young people, but really nice, easy to get along with, very professional. And when I saw their show, I was blown away that they're very rock and roll. So that was fun. But, so I don't do a lot of bands nowadays. But I don't try to create something for a band. I try to capture what they are.
Right. What's your... in those first few moments, and I'm trying to relate some of this to my own work as a documentary filmmaker. What's that first hour, those first half an hour when you're with the band and you're going to do something? What do you do with them? Do you start taking pictures right away? Do you just watch? Do you listen?
Well, generally we'll meet and talk a little bit. I'll get a feeling of who they are and what they like, and before the session, we kind of get an idea of where they want to go or what they want to do. With Maneskin, they wanted pictures in New York, so I picked several spots, Times Square. We went on the top of my building, the building I live in the West Village, because I can get to the top easily, and it's got a really great view of New York. I also took them to the top of the Rockefeller Center in the middle of New York, where you might be familiar with my pictures of the Clash or Green Day that I did with the New York City background. That's from
I'm looking at it right now.
That's from the Rockefeller Center roof. So we got permission. I took Maneskin up there and showed them the glory of New York from the top of the city, and they really had a good time. We went to Central Park, went to the Strawberry Fields Memorial, went to the other side of the park by a bridge. It's a very popular place for pictures. Had a good time.
Yeah. And I imagine you're engaging with them a lot. I imagine you're engaging a lot with them, just trying to break down any formality, right? Because your style is very sort of, in a way, verite. You're right up in there, and
I'm very loose. Some photographers like Mick Rock like to work in the studio. I prefer to just work spontaneously, outdoors, wherever the band is. I've taken walks. A lot of times if I do a session, for many years bands would come to my studio. I could take a couple of pictures in the studio with a blank background, but I would take a walk with them around the neighborhood. Just go 3 or 4 blocks around the neighborhood, just to get a variety of pictures outside. It's a typical West Village streets. I've been walking around them for 40 years. I've never taken the same picture twice.
Wow.
It all depends on who the band is, how many people in the band, what the weather is, and just what looks good that particular day. And like I say, it's always, every day is different. So I really like to work spontaneously and just catch a natural kind of feeling. I feel like working in the studio for me is very stiff. I don't know how to really bring people out when you're in that kind of very formal setting.
Do you have a preference? Let's say, is it filming the concert footage, quote unquote, or is it more hanging out?
No,
with
I
the
don't really have a
band?
preference. Whatever the band wants, I'll try and do my best.
You try to get right in there. When you go out on something like that with a band on the street, what do you have with you?
Oh, I usually have very basic equipment. Nowadays, I just need one camera, because I work with digital cameras. The old days, I needed basically 3, one for black and white, one for daylight color, and one for indoor color. I usually have a choice just of basically 3 lenses, a wide angle, a normal one, and a telephoto, a short, like a 125 or something for portrait kind of work. And I carry that myself. I don't travel with a lot of assistants. Sometimes I'll bring an assistant who will carry a light, if we need it for that particular day.
Yeah.
But quite often I travel by myself, maybe with one assistant to help with some equipment. But I don't usually have extra equipment, so it's usually just me.
You, 3 lenses, 1 camera. What's your camera of choice?
Nowadays I use the Canon, the EOS system. I think it's a Canon EOS 5 Mark II, something like that is what I'm up to.
Yep.
In my life, I started with my father's Minolta camera. As soon as I sold my first Tina Turner album cover, I bought a Nikon, and I used Nikon for several years after that, but they're very heavy and big. And in '74, I discovered the Olympus cameras, which are much more compact, and they take just as good a picture for what I was doing. And then I used the Olympus until 1990, when the Canon came out with a very good electronics where it's autofocus. They were very fast autofocus, very fast auto exposure. And before that, they weren't really accurate, but by 1990, they really worked well. So I've been using Canon ever since. In 2000, when the digital quality got good enough to sell, I started using digital cameras. And after that, in the 90s, you could still send out prints. I mean, because 70s, 80s, 90s, if you wanted to send pictures to a magazine, you actually sent pictures, put them in an envelope and mailed them, actual photo prints. But after 2000, and in the 90s, you could still send a print or a slide to a magazine, and they would scan it or send it to the printer, and the printer would scan it into their system. After 2000, enough people had their own scanners and digital cameras that you can't send a print or a slide to a magazine. I don't think anybody working in a magazine who's anybody under 40 years old has probably never seen a color transparency and doesn't know what I'm talking about. A piece of color film and a cardboard mount, which was actually the photo. But nowadays, it's all done electronically, and after 2000, we had to send scans. And so there was no point for me to keep taking pictures in film, which would then have to be transferred to a scan because I couldn't send a print or a slide to a magazine. Right. So I just started shooting everything digitally because then you have a clean scan to send. And, scanning a photo print is not as easy as just putting it down and pushing a button, because once you scan the print, you then have to clean all the little dust marks and things off of it. So it's a lot easier just to take a digital picture and start with a nice clean scan and use that.
So it sounds like you were someone that embraced the change in technology. You didn't try to fight it and say, I'm going to stay old school and stay with film mostly.
I was never really a lot about the quality of the picture. I'm much more interested in the feeling that you get from a photo, from the image. Mm-hmm. I learned early on with pictures like Cartier-Bresson or somebody who's not crystal clear focus, but he's crystal clear in the moment and the feeling. And I like to say that my pictures might not be sharp, but the feelings are very clear.
There you go. Wise words from a wise, wise man. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for this short clip and also for the podcast. Remember, sign up to our mailing list over at Roadiefreeradio.com. That way you are informed when every time a new episode comes out. We'd love to have you on board. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay safe out there, and I'll see you down the road.